hello there. Welcome to another broadcast for Marriage Beyond the Breach. It's your girl, Valerie Mason Chase, and
the Cookie Man.
The Cookie Man. Welcome. Hello. Welcome all of you. Thank you for tuning in live, or if you are watching this at a later time. So we have a kind of a touchy subject tonight to talk about. So, hun, what are we going to talk about tonight?
Better or worse?
For better or worse. And I think that's kind of a loaded statement. As part of our vows. We took those vows when we first got married. But what does it all mean? I came across this song on YouTube. So let me just play a little bit of this song for you, and then we're going to get right into our discussion.
In my world, and now that things are a little down, the money went low, and now you don't wanna be around. I understand that you won't find a thing, all the diamonds and pearls, materialistic things. But I done my best to give you the things you want. I work my fingers to the bone to give you a happy home. What happened to the better or worse? Tell me, baby. We traded a vow. We said I do. Tell me, baby, better or worse.
And I know some married people might be wondering that very thing, Frank, and asking their partner the question, what happened to the better or worse? What happened to those vows we made on the day that we got married? So what does it mean to you, for better or worse? What comes to mind for you?
What first comes to mind when I hear that, when you speak about people meeting each other, is, again, what does that mean? We are so ill-equipped to really understand that. Most of us, using us for example, got married in our early 20s. We are not thinking ahead. At that moment, everything's as bells and whistles, all looks good. Yeah. We are not thinking the worst of anything, because right at that moment, everything looks good. It's the best it can be at that moment. We have no idea what's to come, nor how to even handle it.
We sure didn't. I know we didn't. We had absolutely no idea. No. I just want to give a shout out to some who are watching. Hey, Lisa Hopkins, Nisi, Jackie, my sister Jackie, Nisi Bethia, Kayla. Thank you all so much for watching. And those of you, if you are married yourself, or if you have people that you think could benefit from this discussion, by all means, please share it. And don't hesitate. Type in your questions. If you have a question, if you want to add something to the conversation, we absolutely welcome it. If you have a question, prayerfully, we'll be able to give you an answer to the best of our ability. But by all means, we want you to join in this conversation. Go ahead, babe.
I want to expand on what I just said earlier. For me personally, at what was I, 22? When 22. We got married? 22. Yeah. So all I'm thinking in terms of better is, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to come home, and I'm going to be the best provider I can be.
Yeah.
For my wife and my children. That's all I'm thinking about.
Yeah. And that makes sense, because I don't know about you. Well, I kind of do know about you.
Yeah, well, after this.
I've been 20-some years. We do, okay?
You should know a little something about me.
So here's the thing. Frank was 22 when we got married. I was 23. And neither one of us had really witnessed a healthy marriage. We had not witnessed a healthy marriage. I had not. Had you witnessed a healthy marriage? I don't think you did.
Not that I can. And when you say healthy, I mean, as I got older, I remembered some things that would not have been healthy. But when I was young, again, it looked healthy to me.
It looked healthy when you were growing
so
up.
I'm just going to base it on that. As a young kid, what I saw in a particular marriage, or maybe more than one, looked healthy for me. The man was always there.
Yeah.
The wife was there. The children were happy. We were happy. So it looked healthy.
And as you got older and started to see some of those same marriages that you thought were healthy when you were a kid, you didn't know about healthy when you were a kid.
No.
If they were together and everything looked okay.
That's it.
But as you got older, I'm wondering if your take on it, or if your perspective on those marriages was different at all.
Yeah. As again, getting old and understanding some of the dynamics, I would say it was not the best, but again, it was the best for their situation, those situations, and they manage like most couples do,
like we all do.
Yeah, really?
I mean, because we're talking about for better or worse. I know when we got married, I don't know how many other people really give some serious thought to what those vows mean, or are we just saying the vows because it's part of the ceremony?
Right, exactly.
But it's not meant to be just part of the ceremony. It's meant to be part of our existence. It's meant to be how we live and within our marriage and how we show up in our marriage. But I think we were just kind of saying the words.
We do. We kind of follow the scripts that we read or heard about growing up, and you learn to deal with it or how to handle it if you're blessed to stay married long enough.
Yeah. See, we laughing because we've had better.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have had a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah, sure.
We had a whole lot of worse. We had a whole heap of worse. We had so much worse that I didn't think that our marriage would survive and that we'd still be here today.
Yeah, you didn't think it would. I didn't want it to. At least that's what I was trying to convince myself. I didn't want to. But again, when growth comes, you learn to deal with that worst, because that worst is going to come.
The worst will come.
It's going to come.
The worst absolutely will come. And my sister Jackie said, I don't think most people really think or understand the intensity and depth of those words. You are absolutely right, sis. We don't think about it. We just know we in love.
We meet somebody.
We just want to be with this person. We want to get married. And we're not looking ahead at the possibility that things could be different than they are on our wedding day. It's not always... you are so right, Sister Lisa. It's no joke. For better or worse, it's no joke. We don't think about the possibility of the bad coming, or what that bad might look like, or how bad it could actually get.
And again, to reiterate, it goes back to what I just said, we're so ill-equipped to handle it. And then if you don't learn how to handle it when it comes, and maybe you divorce and you get married, that worst is going to come again, and you're probably going to make the same mistakes because you didn't learn how to handle it before. Didn't learn how to handle it the first time.
So I know for me, I know what the worst was in our marriage. It probably was the same for you. So I'm going to ask, what was, from your perspective, what was the absolute worst in our marriage for you?
The infidelity.
For me too.
The infidelity coupled with the lying and all that other stuff. It comes into one big pot.
Yeah, because you can't cheat without lying.
Some get better at it than others.
Yes. He's looking at me. Yeah, because hey, we women, we can do it. We're a little better at it than the guys are. So Lisa said it's even more difficult when you don't see healthy examples of handling adversity in your marriage.
Correct.
You were so right. Hey, Vicky is watching. My son Hammy. Hey, Hammy. You were so right. When you don't see how couples work through adversity, you don't have that example of seeing someone actually go through the tough times and get through those tough times to get to the other side. Because that's the hard part, is being on this side of the worst and even considering the possibility that there could be something better on the other side if you just stick it out, if you hang in there.
You're not even, half the time, you're not even thinking about what's going to look like on the other side.
Jackie said, when the worst becomes detrimental to your well-being, that is when you have to reevaluate the marriage. At least I did. You are absolutely right, sis. You are absolutely positively right. So I just want to put this out there that Frank and I, we are not saying that what worked for us or what we did is going to work for every single couple. We are just putting it out there as a possibility that this is what can happen. Okay, because there are some marriages that people probably should divorce, and if not divorce, then absolutely separate for a time so that you both can work on yourselves and the issues that you have in a marriage. There are, even in my counseling, there are some couples that I recommend a separation, because there's something in counseling known as a therapeutic separation, and sometimes that is the healthiest thing for the marriage and for both people to do. And
using us for example, I have to be, if I'm going to be honest, if you would have allowed me to continue, or we would have, I'm going to say you, if you would allow things to continue the way they were going, without that separation, I would not have had a chance to reevaluate my situation, reevaluate what I'm feeling, reevaluate what I want 5 or 6 years or 7 years down the line. I'd have to continue to just been, doing whatever, and never had a chance to think about things. Yes, because even in the worst, and if you have decided to stay in the marriage, sometimes you do need to separate. You do need to separate, because just because you love your spouse and you want the marriage to work, there still has to be some accountability. There has to be some accountability. There has to be some change, because you cannot continue in that same vein and expect the marriage to be a healthy, a mutually satisfying, and a loving relationship. So that's why I think in some situations, separation is absolutely called for. When there's a matter of physical safety, when there's a matter of emotional safety, when addictions are involved and the other person is refusing to get help for their addiction, sometimes a therapeutic separation is called for. But the goal of that, even with the therapeutic separation, the goal is to ultimately reconcile. Right. And to not stay separated permanently. Although, listen, when we separated, I ain't know nothing about no therapeutic separation. I just knew that I needed to get away from you. I was dragging you down. You were dragging me down. He was absolutely. I was absolutely. You were. I'm so glad you can admit that, babe. Yeah, I know. He couldn't admit it back then, because I don't forget our last separation. This is what happened. I remember because the last 8 years of my mother's life, she lived with Frank and I, and she had a steady decline over the course of that 8-year period. And I remember, I didn't know when my mother was going to pass away, but I remember it was probably about a year before my mom eventually passed away. I said to Frank, I said, if things don't change, when mama dies, I'm leaving. Yeah, you remember that? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I said, if things don't change, I love you, but if things don't change when mama dies, I'm leaving. I wasn't going to leave then, quite frankly, because I needed his help to take care of mama. And I thought about that. I said, you're going to hang around my because I'm helping you clean and take care of your mother. Now, mind you, I love mama to death. And I didn't care about taking care of her. But I sure said that, And then when it happened, I said, mama gone, so now you gone. Yeah, so I remember saying that. And I didn't know when my mother was going to pass away, but I knew that things were just getting really, really bad between us. And you and I, he wasn't just hurting me, but I was also hurting him. And it was a level of toxicity that was really, really unhealthy for the both of us. The only good thing, I won't say the only, but one of the only good things in our marriage at that point was the way we took care of mama together. Yeah. Because let me tell you something. I used to say back then, Frank was a piss poor husband back then, but he was one hell of a son-in-law. He took care of my mother
like his own mother. He took care of my mother like I took care of my mother. I know. I'm sorry, babe. I know. It's all right. He's thinking about our mothers because both of us have lost our moms, and it's not easy. It's okay, babe. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, get it out if you need to.
I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, but I enjoy taking care of that lady.
Mm. It's okay?
Yeah.
Can I continue?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Okay, babe. So I had told him that that if things didn't change, that I was going to leave after mom passed away. And it was May of 2012 when mama passed away. It was a week before Mother's Day, that mama passed away in May. And I left. You remember when I left?
I'm not sure. I kind of remember. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, it was September.
Oh, okay.
It was the beginning of September. So I waited from May. I know. Hammy says he's a big baby. It's not that he's a big baby. He's just very emotional, and he has a soft heart, especially when it comes to people that he loves. So I remember from May, I waited May, June, July, August, and nothing had changed. And I was talking to you, and you were talking to me about things that I needed me to change. And I was talking about things that I needed you to change. And there was one day I woke up, Frank was getting ready for work. And I said to him, I said, I'm not going to be here when you get home this evening. You remember what you said?
Yeah, right. I was probably, I'm sure I didn't believe
you. You didn't believe me. You didn't believe me. He said, yeah, right. You're going to be here. You ain't going nowhere. You ain't going nowhere. And, that's my son, Hammy. We call him Hammy, but he's Francis. And I left.
Too, son.
I left. As soon as he left to go to work, I started packing some things. And I remember I was all packed up and I'm sitting there. And now I said, where the hell am I going? Where am I going? I sat there and I cried for a while. And we were living in Sinking Spring at the time in Berks County. And I was working in Philadelphia. I called my daughter, who was living in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania at the time. We lived on the outskirts of Reading. She lived in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I called her and I was crying and I said, Boo Boo. That's my daughter's nickname. I said, Boo Boo. I said, I'm leaving your dad. I said, I'm all packed up and I have nowhere to go. And she said, yes, you do, Mom. Come and stay with me. So that's what I did. I left that day. I moved in with our daughter in Harrisburg. And I drove 5 days a week from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And if any of you know the geography between Harrisburg and Philadelphia, it was a 2-hour drive there and a 2-hour drive back to my daughter. 5 days a week I did that. And it was very, very difficult. But at that time, it was better than living in the situation that we had going on. Because I mean, it was so toxic. We were emotionally killing each other with the infidelity, Frank's infidelity and mine. And that's not something that I readily admitted to or even usually will talk about. But at that time, because the infidelity had gone on with Frank for so long, I was tired. I said, you know what? I need me a boo. I need me a boo too.
And I had so many of my friends, well, not so many friends, some guys I might talk to, oh, don't worry, Frank, she ain't doing that.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to believe that. My mom would say, yeah, but I say, Frank, you're doing so much stuff. She ain't got no choice. And it wasn't so much as a way to hurt me or even get back at me.
Right.
It was about filling a void that I had vacated and she needed filled by someone else.
Wow, babe. I never heard you say that before.
Growth. Growth.
Wow. But whatever the reasons were, it was still wrong.
Yeah, of course.
It was still absolutely wrong. Let me just say this. There is never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, There's no justifiable reason for infidelity in a marriage. The thing to do is to talk about it with your spouse and try to work on the issues or get out of it. But don't stay in it and cheat. Get out. And then maybe you and your spouse can try to work things out. Let me see. My sister here, Kayla, said something. She said, permanent separation without reconciliation once. My now ex-husband created a child outside of our marriage, the same age as our third son. I really tried to work on getting past it. I just couldn't do it. I finalized the uncontested divorce in 2018 after I relocated from Jersey to Georgia. I hear you, sister. I absolutely hear you. And like I said before, there are some situations which it's better for the couple to either separate or to go through and to divorce. We are fortunate that after the birth of our last child, that Frank had a vasectomy, because I have to tell you, in all honesty, had Frank not had that vasectomy after Jonathan was born,
maybe I know where you're going. Maybe I'd have had children out
you
of
probably
wedlock,
would have.
and maybe not.
You
but
probably
again,
would, honey. You were raw dogging. It's not like you were using condoms.
But Val,
but Frank,
I was raw dogging before I met you, and no one got pregnant. So I'm saying it's a
no, someone did. Remember?
Oh, that's you. Okay, that's true.
So someone did.
Okay,
and you got to remember, it's not that you were infertile. We had pregnancies, so it's not that you were infertile. So it's a reasonable assumption. Let me rephrase that. It is a reasonable assumption that had Frank not had his vasectomy after our last child was born, he probably would have had several baby mamas out there.
Sure, it's possible. And my mind was so poisoned. I used to convince myself, man, I got this vasectomy. I'm good to go. I do what I want to, because can nobody come back and tell me I got a baby somewhere?
Yeah, somebody tried to tell me that my husband got them pregnant, but I already knew that shit was lying. Okay, what I said to her is, yeah, he might have blanked you, but he ain't make no baby with you. Get up out of my face. I said a little bit more than that, but we won't go there.
Absolutely.
We will not go there. So, Kayla, I understand. And definitely there are times when you do need to seriously consider, at the very least, consider a separation for a period of time so that both of you can work on yourselves. There was something that Frank and I, we were reading yesterday, as a matter of fact, in our couple devotional. Go ahead, babe.
With Val talking about the separation, I think back to many times we were separated. There were several times we were separated.
3 times.
Right. The last time being the longest. Yeah. Even with that separation, almost lost my train of thought. Oh, it took that one time where it really hit me, which Val kind of cut off everything. Yes. No calls. You can't take me out. You can't come by to see me. Nothing unless it was about the children. And it was a couple of times my son would come over with my oldest son. And I would, I'll try, hey, Frank, how's your mother doing? What's she doing? Hey, Dad, listen, I miss your mom. I want your mom back. And he said, well, you got to do what you need to do. If that's what you want. I remember that. And don't get me wrong. It still was a process, because even after that moment, there was still times of infidelity, times of lying, times of being dishonest. So it was still a process, that process of getting to the point where things could get better. Whew. And that was a long, boy, I tell you, that moment of admitting your wrongs and wanting to change, and the what's the word I'm looking for? The accountability that you have to face is a daunting task, fellas, ladies. It's a daunting thing. It's not for the weak.
Yes. And what was most challenging for you?
Transparency, I say.
Yeah.
Because that encompasses everything, whether it was me giving up passwords to my phone. Oh boy, that was I think I hung on to that for the longest time.
Yeah, you did.
Giving away passwords to social media or my phone, or calling when I got someplace. I'm a grown freaking man. I got to call. I'm going out like I'm still living with my mother. You got to call. Why I got to call? You got to call. You got
Right.
to, and this is why. You know why you have to call. Are you willing to do it? And it took me a while to get there.
Took you a while, but you did it. And why did you do it? That's what people need to hear.
Right.
What was the impetus?
Yeah, I wanted to. And I love my wife.
And see, here's the thing. I could have browbeat him. I could have been all on his behind, like white on rice, which I was in the beginning of our marriage. Yeah. And I'm going to go back a little bit and talk some about that. But here's the thing. A person changes when they choose to, when they want to. A person does better in a marriage when they want to, when they choose to. It doesn't matter how much what their spouse says. It didn't matter what I said, because there were times when during our last separation where Frank and I were still seeing each other, and you were still seeing the other woman. But that didn't make any difference to him in our marriage. I wanted us to reconcile. I wanted us to get back together. But until that was what you wanted, and when you made the decision, and when you decided to change, that's when he did it. Not a minute, not a millisecond before then, because browbeating doesn't work.
Absolutely.
And Jackie said, "Wow, Frankie, you are so transparent right now, and know my brother that you are truly a blessing others with your transparency, especially men." Thank you, sis. Thank you, sis. So, going back to the early stages of our marriage, like we said, Frank was 23, I was 22.
No, I was 22. You were 23.
I'm sorry, you were 22 and I was 23 when we got married. Neither one of us knew what the heck we were doing. Okay. And we were both emotionally damaged and unhealthy. I had wounds from trauma, primarily from sexual trauma, and also from witnessing the abuse of my mother. Why are you making a face?
As you said that, I still don't know if I was at that early age.
If you were what?
How'd you describe it? You were emotionally
unhealthy. You were not ready.
Oh, okay.
You were broken.
Right.
You were as broken as I was, but in a different way. Okay. Because I had issues with trust. Because when you have been violated sexually, it erodes your trust. Okay. I was extremely insecure. And I was on Frank like white on rice. And, I didn't realize then what I was doing. But my insecurity and my low self-esteem, not valuing myself and having such a low sense of self-worth, and the behaviors that resulted from that, created an environment that made it easy to cheat. It made it easy. And I'm not excusing his behavior. Correct. Not at all. I am not excusing his behavior, but it would be remiss of me to not acknowledge how I, in my brokenness, contributed to the toxicity that entered into our marriage. It wasn't just about his cheating. It was about my insecurity as well. Because I used to be on him like white on rice. The man could hardly he couldn't hardly fart unless I was right behind him there to smell it. I was on his back because, and it was all based out of fear. It was very fear-based because I also had issues of abandonment. I was afraid that he was going to leave, and I was afraid that he was going to cheat and do things. But my behavior, it ended up being what's known as a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I was so afraid, and the very thing I feared the most ended up happening, and I contributed to it. And it took me years and years and years and years and years to be able to sit here and admit that now, because I contributed to that.
When I think back of those early stages, the things that used to stress me out the most, I mean, literally had me nervous, sweating, is when I was coming home from work, and if I was running late. I mean, I would just be a mess. I'd be a mess coming home. And a lot of times I would say, well, shit, I don't want to go home because, and especially at that moment when in that those few moments in time when nothing was going on, I would say, damn.
That was about 5 minutes.
I don't want to go home to hear this. Why go home? And it was hard. It was hard to have to come home and face those times. That worst, because that worst came early for us.
That worst came very early for us. That worst came within the first few years of our marriage. And it lasted. It lasted off and on. I can't even say how many years, but all I can say is this. Our marriage really became that better part of Better for Worse, I would say, in 2018.
Yeah.
2018, and this is just 2022, y'all. And we married back in 1981. Okay, so that was a whole lot of years of worse. Now we had some good moments in between there.
Moments,
we did, absolutely. But there was worse. There'd be worse, and then it'd be a little bit better. Then it'd be worse and a little bit better, and worse and a little bit better, and that went on. I would say from starting maybe the first 5 years we were married.
Yeah,
up until 2018, and that's a long time. And again, I am not saying that is what every single married couple should do. We are just trying to share how we got from our worst to our better. Okay, not saying that this is what everybody has to do, because there were moments when, I think during our first separation, I remember, because at first we married in Brooklyn in 1981, and then we moved to upstate New York. We lived in Poughkeepsie for a few years, and that's when Frank had the first affair that I became aware of. I found out years later that he had affairs prior to that, but I didn't know about it, and that was around 92-ish. When you got involved with that woman upstate. And so from 92 until December 30th, 1995 is when Frank carried on that affair with that particular female. And it was the end of December. It was the end of December 1995 when I said, you know what? I can't do this anymore. I have to leave, because I was shattered. I mean, I was so incredibly broken and suicidal. Because there was a point there where I was suicidal. I remember I was smoking. And I had smoked cigarettes, not weed. I had smoked so many cigarettes that I now realized I was starting to get nicotine poisoning. And I remember one day I was laying in the bed and I just wanted to die. And I had made a decision I was going to kill myself. But I believe in there's no coincidences. Okay. God sent our son Hammy into the room. Hammy came into the room, and I don't know if I was crying or I don't remember what. I just remember that he came in and he embraced me. And he said, Mom, I love you. And he said, Mama, it's all right. I'm never going to hurt you. It's okay, Mom. And at that moment, I said, Lord, I can't kill myself. I cannot leave my children. I could not. I made a decision then to not kill myself, but I was in a really, really, really bad way. So I had said, because at that point, Frank had left home, and I think you were even living with your grandparents, or you had got your own apartment. I had an apartment
for a little while, and then between them and the apartment, yeah.
So I said, I can't stay here. And December 30th, 1995, the children and I relocated from upstate New York back to Brooklyn. Me and the kids came back to Brooklyn. And
excuse me, I'm sorry, because when you said the apartment, this is how, if you want to use the word crazy, our marriage has been and all the stuff, even in those worst of times when I was feeling like I had my own apartment, who came over there bringing me pots and pans and want to help me decorate the bad boy?
Me.
I knew what that was about. I was about to keep the connection because she didn't want what was going on to happen, and the love for me, even through all of that. She came to the apartment.
I did. So that was December
Mhm.
95. Me and the kids moved back to Brooklyn, and Frank was still upstate. He was still involved in that other relationship. And I remember very distinctly, there was one day I was driving down Eastern Parkway. And I remember this is 1996 now. And I heard, and again, to me, it's all God. Okay. I heard a voice say, Val, call your husband. I didn't want to call that mofo. He's upstate with this other woman. I did not want to call him, but I kept hearing the voice. Val, call your husband. Val, call your husband. Val, call your husband. So I stopped somewhere on Eastern Parkway at a payphone. They had payphones back in 1996, okay? I stopped at a payphone, and I didn't even know what I was going to say. But I don't know if you remember that call.
Not yet.
But I stopped at the payphone, and I called him, and I think I might have said to you that I just felt like I needed to call you, and I asked you about coming down to Brooklyn to spend some time with me and the children. I didn't want to do that because I felt like a fool. Why am I calling this man when he's up there? He got a whole other relationship, and me and the kids down here, and we were struggling financially at the time. So anyway, fast forward, 96, we reconcile. Got back together in 96. And I think things were okay for about 2.5 minutes.
We could look back at some things and chuckle because,
Mhm.
because I still wasn't ready. Yeah, it was nice that she called and everything, but now you're bringing me back home.
Yes.
Home. Where the grounds are more fertile. Back in Brooklyn where I grew up.
Yes.
You know what? Oh, Lord.
Yeah. So it didn't take long when the affair started up again. So again, Frank was out in the street, running the street, and there were times when I would be sitting on side of the bed, crying and praying and asking God to just strike him dead. I know that's terrible, right? I hate to admit it, but listen,
I thought those same things.
I gotta keep it real.
About you. Yeah,
I got to keep it real with you guys. As the kids say, 100. Okay, and this level of transparency that we are engaging in right now is, well, it's not because we are proud of some of the things that we did, but to help someone else to know that even if you are in the worst you could ever possibly imagine, that there is hope, that there is a better on the other side. So I'd be sitting there praying and ask God to kill him. I'm saying, God, he ain't nothing. My mama had to say, he ain't nothing but breath and britches. He ain't nothing but breath and britches. He's a waste of space, God. Why is he still alive? And I just prayed for God to kill him. And I'm so glad that God didn't answer that prayer. I know you too, right?
Yeah.
I'm so glad. But anywho, so the affairs continued. And eventually we moved up here to Pennsylvania. The affairs continued, his and mine kept going, because by that time I had gotten involved with someone else. And that's when, like I said, in September of 2012 is when I left for the final time, when we separated. And that was difficult because I left that day, right? I told him that morning that I wasn't going to be here when you got home. This mofo came home, so I wasn't there. Do you think he called me and said, hey, Val, what's going on? Let's talk about it. Come back home. This Negro, he ain't paying me no mind whatsoever. And now I'm doubly crushed. I'm triply crushed. I'm quadruply crushed because now I'm expecting. See, this is what I was expecting when I left. I didn't want to stay gone. Truth be told, I did not want to stay gone when I left in September of 2012. My expectation was that you were going to love me enough, that you were going to care about me enough, that you were going to come running after me, and you were going to change your ways.
But again, and
we were going to reconcile. But it took from 2012 to 2018 for that to happen.
It did. It did. At that moment that she's referring to, I feel like I can't call. Okay, I'm sitting there, and it's not like I didn't think about it. You know what? I did, but I was being more selfish because I was thinking about myself. Oh, you done left me? Wow. You embarrass me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, chucking my manhood. No, I can't chase after you.
He didn't.
All I'm thinking is, all right, you gone. So you telling me I could just, you know, left. Now it's wide on, do whatever I want to.
And he did too.
And I did.
When buck
and
wild.
Again,
he went
I'm not saying
freaking wild.
That was the right. It obviously wasn't the right thing, but my mindset was, this is what I'm going to do. You done left. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
And see, here's the thing. I according to the Bible, I had biblical grounds. I could have divorced Frank at any point after the infidelity started. I could have divorced because the Bible tells us it's in Matthew 5:32 and Matthew 19:9, which gives an indication reason why you can divorce. Marital infidelity or sexual immorality. What sexual immorality, which infidelity falls into that category of sexual immorality. So I had clear biblical grounds. I could have divorced Frank at any point. And there were at least 2 times, maybe 3, but at least 2 where we were close to divorce. The closest, I believe, was around 2016 or so, when we had drawn up the papers. Remember? I don't know if you recall.
No, you drew, because
I had got the papers together.
See, I would have continued to do what I was doing.
He didn't want a divorce.
As I wasn't thinking about signing nothing. Okay, you want the divorce, you get the papers. That was my mindset.
Yeah.
You know, believing that she wasn't going to do it. I mean, not saying that I obviously didn't want her to do it in spite of what I was doing, but I wasn't going to be part of that. Heck no.
Yeah, Frank didn't want a divorce. And actually, had I not drawn up the papers and gone through all that, Frank never would have done that. But here's the thing. I remember we had gotten the papers. We had gotten it notarized. We had done all the paperwork, right? I had the documents. And I was going to take the documents down to the court to file the papers on Monday morning. Okay?
I remember.
But that Sunday, during my devotional time, I was praying, crying and praying like I usually did. Okay. And I was praying. And I said, God, you know what? I said, Lord, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I have done as far as I can go, and I cannot go anymore. I can't take it, Lord. But even in this, I want to be obedient to you. But if I don't hear from you by 9:00 tomorrow morning, I'm taking these papers down to the courthouse to file for divorce, and I'm cutting his behind loose. I'm done. That was Sunday morning. And I went to church that day, and I was a co-teacher with Brother Emeka Oswagwu. And I remember going into the classroom. He was already in there. The students had not arrived. The attendees of the class had not arrived yet. I walked in and I said, "Good morning, Brother Emeka." And he looked at me and said, "Val, you know what? It's all about faith and patience. Sometimes people give up too soon." And when he said that, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, because I perceived that was God speaking to me and telling me, "Val, don't you dare take those papers down to the courthouse. You're giving up too soon. Have faith, have patience." I didn't take the papers down. I didn't get rid of them just yet. I held on to them just in case it wasn't really God that was speaking to me, okay? But I didn't file the papers. I held on to them. That was 2016. And I thought, okay, Lord, you spoke to me. We fixing to get back together. My husband fixing to get some act right. And we're going to reconcile. It didn't happen. And after a year passed in 2017, I started questioning, but God, was that really you? Did I really hear from you? Did you really put the brakes on this divorce? Maybe I got it wrong. Because by that time, a year had passed, and by then I had burned the divorce papers. Okay. But I was pissed off. I was annoyed. I was really mad at God because he stopped the divorce proceeding in 2016. 2017, nothing had happened. And then in 2018, finally is when Frank and I reconciled, but then only after I had completely disengaged from you.
Mm-hmm.
Completely disengaged.
Yeah.
Because up until then, you and I were still spending time together. You would still come over. He'd spend the night. We were still having sex. We were still going out on dates in the midst of him still being involved with that other female. And
I'm not doubting what you're saying about me. I'm just trying to,
No, I had that was over. It was. Now you know it was.
Well, it depends what we talk about. Something might have been over.
No, everything was over.
Okay, so
you know at that point everything was. But anywho,
you know what?
Go ahead.
That's still that defense mechanism. Even though we're kind of talking and being honest.
Yeah.
And you said that there's still that defense mechanism. I feel sometimes when I feel like she's, throwing me under the bus. I feel like I defend myself a little bit.
Oh, babe. Okay. I'll tell you this. I might put you under the bus, but I won't back it up.
Okay.
All
right.
Okay. So anywho, it was in 2018 when, I finally said, I'm just cutting all ties from Frank. That's it. No more calling, no more texting, no emailing, no conversations, no coming over, none of that whatsoever. And Frank did test that boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Say how you tested the boundary, Frank.
I don't know. I remember maybe coming and ringing a bell, or I call Val and say something about one of the kids or something.
No, the grandchildren.
Oh, the grandchildren. Whatever I might have did, I knew I was trying to test it and see how strong it was going to be. And it was one of those days.
Because why were you testing it, and why did you think that the boundary was a weak boundary?
Because I had always been able to come back around.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
No matter what was said, no matter what I did, I was always able to come back through the door.
Yeah.
So it really took, and don't get me wrong, even at that moment, there was still some issues going on for me.
Yeah.
But it really took for Val to shut that door closed, because if not, I was coming through the vents, I was coming through the window cracks. I find a little seepage, I'm going to come through.
He was going to come through, but I said, no, this time I finally had some really strong boundaries. I had very weak boundaries before, but this time was very strong boundaries, and Frank could not believe it.
Yeah.
He came up to the door one day, rang the bell, all indignant, and I think this is what got you, is because when I had said, could you please just show me the respect?
Yeah.
Show me the respect of honoring my request of staying away.
And and I might have heard those words before, show me some respect, but it was something different at that moment when she said that to me. I just kind of turned and walked away feeling very dejected, feeling very beaten, so to speak, due to my own behaviors, but it was something different. And again, it still was a process to get us back together and sit. Even after that, but it was still that moment that something changed.
Something did.
Yeah.
Because I call it that day, he went sulking with his tail between his legs, because he did like this. I think you saw a different Val that day.
Yeah.
Because before it would have been, okay, babe, come on in. I would have probably fixed him something to eat. We would have sat. We would have ate. We would have had sex. We would have done all that stuff that husbands and wives do, because we're still legally married, okay? And that was how I justified it in my mind. I look back on it now, and I say, that's how I justified it in my mind, because he's my husband. I don't give a rat's behind who else he's sleeping with. He should be sleeping with me because I'm his wife. But I should not have done that, because I knew he was still having sex with that other female, and unprotected sex at that. And you and I had unprotected sex as well. Anytime you would come over, there were a couple of times when we kind of sort of thought we were going to use condoms.
Yeah, no, that was just, I was trying to appease you.
I know, but it didn't really work. But when I put up those strong boundaries, that's when things were different. And Frank did try. He even tried using our grandbabies, because we only had Sanaya at that time.
Yeah, because I was at my apartment. Yeah, I don't know what I said or what I did.
No, what he did was, because he would text me, I wouldn't answer. He would call me and I wouldn't answer. So he texted me a picture with him and the granddaughter. Said, hey, Val, check out Sanaya. But what he really was wanting me to check him out.
Right. Just get some communication, some kind of feedback, a hello, nice. Right. You kept saying using gratitude. I was thinking something different. Right. It was about sending a picture just to get her to communicate.
Yeah.
Crickets.
It didn't work.
Crickets.
It did not work. But it wasn't until I would say mid 2018 when Frank had said to me, well, he wanted to come back home. He had changed. He was going to be different and all this. I didn't believe him because he had said that for so many times. Remind you, Frank and I met in 1980. Okay. And this was now 2018. And from the first 5 years of our marriage, from that point on, Frank would say at various points in our marriage that things were going to change. He was going to be different. He was going to stop cheating. He was going to stop lying. He was going to stop doing all those things. So, of course, in 2018, I believed the man. I believe him. I didn't believe it. I've heard it all before. I did not want to hear it again. But I had a conversation with my pastor, Dr. Darius Daniels. And I had spoken to him before to let him know what was going on. That's my pastor, okay? That's my spiritual father. So I'm of course letting him know what's going on. And I had a conversation with him and I let him know what was going on with Frank and I and what you had said about wanting to come back. And what you said to me was, well, Val, how can you see or know that I've changed if you never allow me to be in your presence? And I said, you know what? I talked to my pastor and I said, Pastor, that kind of makes sense. I said, but I'm scared. I am so afraid to let him back in because of everything that he has done up until now. And so what Pastor Daniel said to me that day was, he said, I understand you and you were absolutely right. He said, but he also has a point. He said, now, if there are things that you need to see from him, if there are things that you need him to do, he said, you don't issue ultimatums because ultimatums don't work. But what you can say to him is this and this and this is what I need from you. Of course, you're a grown man. You don't have to do any of the things I'm asking you for. Okay, you don't. But I'm just letting you know that I can't be with you if you don't do those things. I can't do it. This is what I need. I'm not telling you this is what you have to do. I'm telling you this is what I need from you from an emotional perspective. Go ahead.
And I started to, even though it was still a struggle for me, I started to hear that better because there was a difference in the tone.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was being given ultimatums, even though it'd be right to give them. People hardly listen to them, but based on the circumstance, I can understand why someone might want to give an ultimatum. Might not work. But I started to hear things differently. And I'm sure it was because I wanted to do different. So I'm starting to hear different. Again, don't get me wrong. It still was a process.
It still was.
For a lot of my learned behaviors, my choices to change, being completely honest. And at the first time asked a question, as opposed to the second time being asked the same question, and now you're being honest, you're telling the truth or something. So it still took a while, but
it did take a while. And really, really, really keeping it real, after we reconciled in mid 2018, I went somewhere. I don't know where I went. I went on a trip somewhere. And while I was gone, Frank went and had a date with that other woman. You remember?
Yeah.
I know you remember.
Yeah.
Because we had some problems after that.
Try not to.
You try not to remember.
But I did. Again, it continued to be a selfish struggle, trying to fulfill my needs, whatever they were. Even though I knew there were times I'd be going someplace and I said, Frank, why are you going XYZ? But I could not hear it enough to convince myself to turn around and go back. I didn't have that resolve yet.
Yeah. It took a while. So that's why, we're sharing this here. Okay. Because we went through a lot. And when you say for better or worse, we had a whole lot of worse.
Back around, better or worse.
There was a lot of pain, a lot of heartache. There was a lot of emotional abuse that existed in our marriage. And I'm telling you, if not for God, if not for my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, Valerie Renee Mason Chase would not be sitting here next to this man. I absolutely would not, because in and of myself, I was done. I wanted to leave the marriage. I wanted to end the marriage. I didn't want anything else to do with Frank. But it's only because I listened to the voice of God when I heard those words, faith and patience. Faith and patience. And that's what it really takes, is faith and patience. It takes that. But it also takes both people making a decision that this is what they really want, and they are willing to do the work, because it takes work. And on Frank's part and on my part, because I had to get to the place where I could not just see, but also admit and apologize for the part I played in it. Because it wasn't, relationships or rather affairs don't occur in a vacuum.
Correct.
And Dr. Phil has a saying, I don't agree with everything about Dr. Phil, but one thing he says is no matter how flat you make a pancake, there's always two sides. And when there is infidelity in a marriage, there's always two sides. Now, the unfaithful partner might be 95% responsible, but there's still another 5%. And no matter what percentage it is, the betrayed spouse still has to be accountable for whatever part they played. So what is for better or worse? For me, it means experiencing the worst, but having, first of all, my relationship with God and having unconditional love for my husband. And that's not an easy thing to do. We say we love, but most of us love with conditions. What do you think, Frank?
Didn't we talk about that?
We talked about it yesterday.
About people go into marriages with conditions. And I didn't really believe that at first, because I'm just thinking about getting married. Not I'm getting married based on a condition, like if you don't do X, Y, and Z, I'm already gone. But forgot your question.
About conditional versus unconditional love.
Well, obviously, conditional love, unconditional love can take you through a whole lot. It can sustain a lot. But to have that unconditional love for someone else, you have to be willing, in my case, not to be so self-centered and selfish.
Absolutely. Because unconditional love is selfless.
Correct.
It is absolutely selfless. And yesterday, Frank mentioned yesterday, because we were reading in our devotional, we have this devotional, Love Language Minute Devotional, the 1 year Love Language Minute Devotional by Gary Chapman. I don't know if you could see it.
No,
because of the light, you can't really see it. But it's by Gary Chapman, the author of the Love Languages book. And this is a fantastical couple devotional, 1 year Love Language Minute Devotional by Gary Chapman. And there were so many things that we read in there yesterday. So, and the one thing we read was about covenant versus contract. Covenant versus contract. Thank you, Fia. Oh, Fia. Hey, Fia. How you doing? Good to see you. We appreciate you, sis. And Kayla was saying conditional love is selfish indeed. Yes, it is. So I just want to read a little bit from this devotional that Frank and I read yesterday. And it asked the question, is marriage a contract or a covenant? It's both, but the emphasis is on covenant. Why? Because most contracts apply to a limited amount of time. For example, a 3-year contract to lease a car. Unfortunately, many people enter marriage with a contract mentality, thinking if it doesn't work, we can get a divorce. Consequently, some research indicates that 1/2 of all marriages end within 2 years. Within 2 years. And unless something really, 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 really egregious has happened, who gets divorced after the first 2 years?
That seems, I don't know.
Something really egregious. I mean, something like physical abuse, or even if there is infidelity. So we are living examples that infidelity does not have to mean the end of your marriage. if the partners are willing to end the affair, commit fully to the marriage, and are willing to do the work, whatever that work looks like. Okay, because Frank coming back, he couldn't dictate to me what he is willing or not willing to do. I couldn't dictate to him what I'm willing or not willing to do. I would have to say to him, listen, this is what I need. This is what I need. Mm-hmm. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to live up to that? Now he's sitting next to me, so obviously the answer was yes. Because if not, he would have been back out there sending me pictures of the grandchildren again.
Right, exactly. And it of course, facing those questions was real easy to say yes. Little did I know how hard it was going to be to follow through on those yeses. Because there were times where, again, I felt the pressure. I felt the stress, and I go question, damn, do you want to have to answer this question? Do you want to deal with this? It was easier not to have to deal with this. Oh my goodness. It was a burden. Yeah. But it was a burden I decided to carry. Yes. And it became less of a weight to carry. Yeah. And that, again, as long as some things started to change and the respect and the trust started to grow, that burden became less of a burden to carry.
Yes, you're right, Sister Kayla. It is the follow through because you can say anything with your mouth. You can flap your lips until the cows come home, but it is the follow through. It is the action after the promise. We can make the promise and we can make the vows and we can do all of that good stuff. But if we are not willing to put in the work afterwards, then essentially, I think we're lying. We're a liar. Right from the heart. That's right, E. Nicole. So let me just read a little bit more out of this devotional. It's talking about the difference between contract and covenant. Another difference between the covenant marriage and a contract marriage, contracts are conditional. I will do this if you will do that. Covenant marriage is based on unconditional love. I am committed to my spouse's well-being. Get this, no matter what. Isn't that the kind of love that God has for us? This is the pattern for Christian marriage. We must be committed to seek our spouse's well-being no matter what he or she does. That's hard, people. That's hard. Certainly, we will seek to hold each other accountable for sinful behavior. Got to do that. But we will not abandon our marriage because we are each other's best source of help. Covenant says, I will always seek your best interests. Now, loving unconditionally and doing the best for this man, no matter what he does, listen, that's hard. That is hard as heck. That is really, really hard. And I'm going to tell you, love with contingencies. That's right. I'm going to tell you what helped make the difference for me. And Frank can answer for himself. But what helps for me is the fact that I'm a born again believer. And I think about how many times I've disappointed God. I've gone against his word. I've acted in ways that are contrary to the ways in which a born again believer should behave. But God loves me anyway. He accepts me anyway. He holds me accountable for what I do. But the love never leaves. The care never leaves. And what helped me is when God had to remind me that he loves Frank just as much as he loves me, because I wanted God to be on my side. I wanted God to love me. I didn't want God to care a rat's behind about Frank. I just wanted him to be on my side. But when God reminded me, he's my son, Val, just as much as you are my daughter. He is also someone for whom Christ died. And that helped me to change the lens through which I see my husband. He's not going to be perfect. He's not going to get it right all the time. But what does that mean in terms of my loving you? Mm-hmm. Because you don't get it right all the time. I don't get it right all the time. But does God remove his love from me? Absolutely not. So that helped me. and learning to live out unconditional love and to not just talk about unconditional love. And it helped get from the worst to what we have now, which is the better. What about you, babe?
Well, what helped me is finally being able to look in the mirror, face what I had become, knew I wanted to change, and then put in the fight. And it had been such a struggle to look at myself. There were times when I think back that a lot of times I would pass a mirror and I didn't want to look. Wow. And I think consciously, I was avoid looking at myself because I was afraid of what I was going to see, or knew what I was going to see, and I didn't want to see it. Wow. So I would kind of not look in the mirror, even though I needed the mirror to shade, whatever I would do. At those moments, I would avoid looking at myself. So what helped me is finally being willing to accept that challenge, look and say, you don't like what you're doing. You don't like what you become, what you're going to do about it. And again, it was a fight. It was a constant battle, back and forth within my own soul. My spirit is not rooted with Val's, but in my spirit, it was a constant fight, a struggle to do the things I said I needed to do and wanted to do.
Yeah. And I had to change. I absolutely had to change my prayer. I had to stop asking God to kill him, first of all. And my prayer was not just for the reconciliation of our marriage, but for God to do a work within him internally and to change who he was internally. Even if our marriage was not reconciled, even if we did not get back together. Let me tell you something, that was hard because I wanted us to get back together. I even got to the point where I started praying for the other woman. I actually started praying for the other woman. Now, you talk about something hard. God had to really chip away a whole lot of stuff in me to get me to the point where I would pray for the other woman. And not just for her to leave my husband alone, but for her also to have a relationship with God. Because if that were to happen, then I would perceive that would also pull her away from him. So maybe indirectly, I don't know if that was kind of manipulative. I don't know. I can't really say for right now. But I did get to the point where my prayers did change. And it wasn't just about reconcile, get us back together, God. I want my husband back, Lord, because I used to be in the shower crying and crying. That was my crying place, was in the shower, because my face, it's not getting a whole lot of wet because, I don't stand under the shower like that. That was my crying place. And I used to pray all the time. That was the focus of my prayer. My mind, everything was consumed with Frank and us getting back together. But eventually God got me to the point where, listen, my focus really and truly is my relationship with God. My focus was on this relationship, not this relationship. If this got back together, great. But even if it never did, God is still on the throne. Jesus is still the Lord of my life, no matter what. And I had to get to that point. And I believe that transition in me also helped when we finally did get back together, because I wasn't just super duper focused on you. It wasn't just about you.
Right. You had a lot of other things in your plate. Sure.
Yeah. Nicole said, yes, God has purpose for our union. Thank you, Nicole. It's hard, but possible to grow and to change. God, thank God for you both. Thank you, baby. I appreciate that so much. It is hard, but possible to grow and to change. It's possible to get through the worst to get to the better. Each couple, each individual in a marriage has to decide for themselves what's the worst.
Right, correct.
What is the worst? I think it's a good conversation for couples to have even before they get married. When we say these vows for better or worse, what's the worst for you? What would be the worst for you in our marriage? And tell your partner what would be the worst for them. And let's talk about it. If that does happen, how do we get through it? What do you think?
I mean, again, it goes back to that say people like us who get married so early, so ill-equipped to handle it. And I don't think that's a question that comes to mind that people are going to think of to even ask what's the worst and what we're going to do about it. You don't know what the hell you're going to do about it.
Well, see, here's the thing.
Until it comes.
But see, that's where counseling comes in. I am an advocate. I am an advocate. I am an advocate. I am an advocate for premarital counseling. Premarital counseling. And I don't mean you're just going to go and meet with the preacher and talk about the logistics for the wedding. I'm not talking about that. I'm speaking of with a therapist who can take you through that process and talk about what marriage really entails. Because a lot of people get married, they don't know what it means to be a wife. They don't know what it means to be a husband. They don't know what marriage looks like. A counselor can help get you through that and help you to have those conversations. Because there are some people who, after having gone through premarital counseling, may decide to not get married.
Yeah, I was about to say you're gonna scare off a lot of folk.
No, but better than after you get married and go through divorce. It's better to know that before you get married. And maybe it isn't that you don't get married. Maybe you just wait. Maybe there's some work that you have to do before you are emotionally in a place where you will be okay as a husband or be okay as a wife. And oh my God, look at the time. I didn't realize we've been talking for over an hour. I'm just going to
say that makes sense, because if we had those conversations early, instead of getting married at 22,
we would have waited.
We might not have get married at 26 or 27
or 30.
You know, because issues would have come out, and some issues. And initially, when you said I was broken, I didn't think I was.
Yeah, but you were
early on. But then it hit me. The things that bothered me.
Yeah.
So I was broken too, and I would have had a chance to discuss those things.
Yeah,
sure.
And work through them. And as would I have if we had had the benefit of premarital counseling. Vicky says many people do not know what it means to be married. You are absolutely right. But that was premarital counseling is for. So if you're single and you're thinking about marriage and you meet someone, even before you get engaged, go for counseling. If you are married and you're struggling, go for counseling. If you have a son, a daughter, a niece, a nephew, a cousin, a brother, a sister who is engaged, encourage them. Hey, Arlita. Encourage them to go for premarital counseling, because there could be some things that come up that they are not even aware that are inside of them. And that's one of the things that we do offer at Marriage Beyond the Breach, because the whole idea of starting Marriage Beyond the Breach. Yes, I want to save as many marriages as God will allow me to and be as influential as God will allow me to be. But there are also some individuals before they get married who need to look at some things. Need to look at this themselves, their history, their family history, all of that before they even get married. So listen, guys, thank you so much for hanging in there with us. I'm sorry, I didn't even realize we had been talking for over an hour.
I did.
That's because I'm the talker, you know. Frank knows I will talk up one side and down the other if I could. Hey, Paula, thank you so much for watching. I want to thank each and every one of you for watching this broadcast. Go to the YouTube channel. I always forget to say this. Go to the YouTube channel, Marriage Beyond the Breach. Hit subscribe and hit the notification bell. You can also find Marriage Beyond the Breach on Instagram as well. And we also have a Facebook page, Marriage Beyond the Breach. We are here to offer any assistance that we can, premarital, marital, affair recovery, whatever it might be. You can reach out to us. And we also at the website, marriagebeyondthebreach.com is the website. So any of you who are watching, you can go to YouTube, and we have a lot of other videos on there that you may find helpful. So make sure that you subscribe. And I'm looking at the Cookie Man's face, and his face is saying, Val, shut the hell up and say goodnight.
Sign off.
So I'm shutting the hell up and I'm saying goodnight. Love you guys. I'll see you next time. Oh, by the way, we won't be here next Sunday in honor of Easter Sunday. Okay? So love you guys. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.